So my name's Heather Himmelwright, and I'm with IBC. And what we wanted to do today is go over, we're having obviously a lunch and learn to go over the new mandate for California, which actually started in 2016, but has slowly been implemented to now where it's hitting quite a few employers, which means any employer that has over 5 employees. And we'll kind of go over what that means. I want to leave this as an open forum where if you have any questions, just you can pop in anytime you want. As many people have said, if you have it, more than likely someone else has a question. But we wanted to do this on a high level as far as what the program is, what it is the employee has to do, or the employer has to provide, and then a few options to what that employer can provide with regards to retirement planning. Integrated Benefits Consultants has been around for, I want to say 17 years now, and providing employee benefits for small to medium-sized companies. Employee benefits means medical, dental, life insurance, retirement plans, individual medical insurance, individual life insurance, disability insurance, all personal insurance, not car insurance, not commercial insurance, just, personal employee benefits. So if you have ever any questions about any of those topics, you can always let us know. But this one we felt was really important because the timeline is so tight. June 30th is the deadline to put something in place. And just to let you know, what we're going to go over is what is a 401k, what's a 401k mandate, or the retirement option mandate. And really, there's 2 different options. There's CalSavers, which is the state of California, and the state of California says, I mentioned anybody over 5 employees, any employer over 5 employees has to offer that, and you could do it through the private market or through CalSavers. And then also the penalties, and the penalties can actually be pretty stiff. We'll go over those as well.
Let me send them something right away.
I want to see if we can. I'd like to wrap this up in like a half an hour. I don't want to waste anybody's time, but I wanted to give you the basics. And then if anybody has any follow-up questions or questions that I can't answer, I'm happy to get back to you guys. Do anything that you need us to do with regards to this, because this is actually, it's going to hit a lot of people that didn't think that it was going to hit them. And so that's the scary part of it. So really, what's a 401k? And I'm sure everybody's heard it. Most of you probably have one, but a 401k is an employer-sponsored program that allows employees to put away money on a pre-tax basis. And you can hear my dogs, on a pre-tax basis. And there are certain limits that are involved with what you can put in. And then that 401k money goes into different mutual funds, lifestyle funds, could go into the bond market, could go into a lot of different things. There's many different options with a private 401k. But essentially, and just to kind of back up, the reason that California and lots of other states are putting this into play is because essentially they found that an employee is 15 times more likely to implement or to save money if they have an employer-sponsored company retirement plan. So that's why this is the genesis of all this. It started, I'll kind of let you know, it started with 100 or more employees, went down to 50, and now it's at 5. So if you have a company that has over 50 employees and does not have a retirement plan, then they are currently out of compliance. But if you have a company of 5, they have until June 30th to implement some type of plan. And we can go over all the different plans that are eligible, but the easiest is going to be either a 401k or the CalSavers program. And we'll go over the pros and cons of both. So as I just mentioned, these are the types of business. The over 100 employees was actually, we thought that the under 5 or the 5 and over would be pushed back because of COVID, but it wasn't. So these dates stayed in place. The only date that was pushed back was for the over 100 employees. So important to understand. Now, this is a big topic. What is the difference? And again, this is going to be on a high level, but what is a 401k? I already mentioned that it's an employer-sponsored plan, and it allows the employees to put away money on a pre-tax basis. That allows the employer to have essentially, it's a tax-deductible benefit to the employer as well. So the contributions are pretty high that you're allowed to put aside on a 401k. There's a bazillion different ways to structure a 401k, lots of different vendors. We, for our startup companies that are just now, because they have to, are now offering a 401k, we've partnered with, essentially, you have to have a third-party administrator, and we've partnered with Nova, which is a TPA, a very inexpensive, very good TPA. And what that TPA is, it's a record keeper. They do all of your annual 5,500 recordings. They do the discrimination testing. They take care of if an employee has to have or wants to take a hardship withdrawal, an employee wants to take a loan, something along those lines. That TPA is the one that's going to be in control of that. Now, there are fees associated with the TPA, but Nova is an extraordinarily, they're very good for startup companies because that's what they do. Startups, small to medium-sized 401k plans, as well as other retirement options as well. But their bread and butter is 401ks. Now, on a 401k, I'd talk a little bit about the different contribution levels that you're allowed to put aside on a 401k. An employee can put away $20,000 a year in 2022. Now, if an employer matched, like let's say that you have an employer that wants to be able to put away money and wants to participate, they can put away up to $67,000 a year on a pre-tax basis. So the difference between the two, the Roth IRA, which is what the CalSavers option is, the max contributions are hugely different. Now, on a traditional 401k, you have, and we also partner with a few different 401k vendors. The best 401k vendor for what they call virgin groups, which is brand new groups to the 401k market. They don't have any money. They don't have a 401k. They're called virgin groups. And the best, most competitive plan is with John Hancock, only because, and I'm not selling John Hancock, I'm just letting you know that from experience, if we want a low cost, very robust 401k vendor, then it's going to be a John Hancock. Now, what the John Hancock does is they manage the money. So your TPA manages all of the logistics of it. Like they set up the plan for you. When you we can go over all the different plan options that you can have. But, what do you want the vesting schedule to be? How do you want to handle your 401k? That's a TPA conversation. The John Hancock or the vendor itself, they're the ones that the employees are going to be able to go into, say, I want this life cycle series, or I want to invest in Vanguard mutual fund, or I want to invest in whatever. There's a list of, and you can make it as small and as large as you want as the employer, but there's lots and lots of different investment options. And that's a huge differentiator between a Roth IRA and a 401k. So very important that the Roth IRA is the most that an employee can put away is $6,000. Now, the 401k is different because it's pre-tax. The Roth IRA, which is the CalSavers option, the Roth IRA, the employee can put away $6,000, but that $6,000 is post-tax. So keep in mind you're doing pre-tax options and then the post-tax options. Now, there are costs to both. The cost on the 401k can be borne by the employer. Some of it will be borne by the employer, but it can also be borne by the employee, some of it. Now, the Roth IRA, the CalSavers option, all of the cost is borne by the employee. And we'll go over the cost for that as well. But important to note that the Roth IRA are very few options. So very few investment options. Really, I don't know if you guys have, looked at your own 401k, and some people, and a lot of our people that have 401ks, they pick either it's called Life Cycle, Life Series, whatever the case may be. But I want to go essentially over, targeted CalSavers plan on your as age. Far as, and that's the Roth IRA. So only option. If you have an employee, or so based upon your age and 35, you're going to not just 5 particular, think of it Life Series 5 full-time employees. That's not the way it all works. It's 5. So employees part-time, the options are vastly different. They have to be on W-2 levels, but if you have, and we have clients like this, the costs are full-time employees a little differently. 3 part-timers, well, when you mix the two and you think about total cost, it's actually less expensive. And what it is, it's to put in place a 401k as opposed to a Roth. And keep in mind that the EDD knows everything. So if you're filing taxes, which an employer has to do, if you have W-2 employees, the EDD knows obviously what they make. They know the employee's name. They know who they have. And so what will start to happen is employers will start to receive letters that'll say, if they haven't already, they'll start to receive letters that say you are obligated to do this. This is how you get into CalSavers. And your employers, if they want to take a look at it, you just go to calsavers.com, take a look, see how it works. The sign up is pretty easy with CalSavers. It's just the moving forward, the administration part of it that's pretty difficult. But what they do is, what happens with an employer is, let's just say they decide to go with the CalSavers, is you go into the CalSavers website and you have to say that you have a 401k or whatever, or you're taking the CalSavers regardless. So an employer has to go in and they have to say, yes, I have something. No, I don't. And if I do, what do I have? If they have the CalSavers, and then they know, and that's no big deal. But what you do is you go in, essentially it's a census enrollment, put in all your employees' information, and the employees have 90 days to elect something. And if they don't elect it, they're auto-enrolled. And they're auto-enrolled for 5%. And then it'll be an additional 1% every year thereafter, up to a max of 8%. If they do not opt out, they are auto-enrolled. So important to keep in mind, the employer will actually get a notification of that happening. But on the employer side, the responsibility for the employer is to, 1, set up the plan, and 2, to make sure that the money goes from, let's just say, if you have ADP or Paychex or whoever your payroll vendor is, that CalSavers and the payroll vendor, that the money will go to CalSavers. So there is some responsibility on the employer side. They like to make it sound like it's real easy. It's not as easy as it sounds. It's about the same, if not more difficult than a 401k, in that there is, keep in mind, and I don't, not to say anything bad about the state, but if you have a state-run government program, you have a state-run government program. It's like dealing with Medicare, well, that's federal, or the DMV, or, something like that. You're not going to get your top level service from a state-run program. And I think everybody knows that. Now, the employers cannot make contributions. So even if an employer wanted to put aside money for a particular employee's, their retirement, they cannot do it through a Roth IRA. Now, when the employees take money out, they take it out. All the gains are taxed. So if they put in $1,000 and they make $1,000, they're going to pay taxes, capital gain taxes on that $1,000. But their basis, that original $1,000, they can actually take that out tax-free. That's their money. And they can take it with them anywhere. So if they go from one CalSavers program to another employer that has CalSavers, they can move it to that particular program. Now, there are some caveats that you can change from a Roth IRA to a traditional IRA. for an employee, but it's incredibly hard to do. And CalSavers is not quite set up to handle it yet without it being grossly difficult. So if you have some of your employers that want to do the CalSavers because, easy peasy, we think it's going to be, nobody's going to participate, this is what we're going to do, well, then they can do it. But the thing is that they have to keep in mind that that it's difficult to unwind because it is that program. So, but it is portable, which is nice. And, there are good things about having a Roth IRA. We talked about the 401k, last tax shelter, obviously. Everything goes in pre-tax. The employer can make contributions as well. Now, there are different type of contributions, and just kind of high-level things that I want to let you know is that on a 401k, there's always something called discrimination testing. And discrimination testing on a very loose level is essentially if 60% of the monies that are going through the plan are considered, and again, this is very high level, we can get into the nuts and bolts of it, but if more than 60% of the money that's flowing into that 401k is by highly compensated employees, the owners, the employees, and we'll just consider it somebody that makes over $135,000. If more than 60% of that money is going in for those people, then, and I don't know if anybody here has had to unwind a 401k, then through the discrimination testing at the end of the year, they'll find out, employee A, who made $135,000, put in $5,000, but they're only eligible to put away $2,000. Well, we have to give back the excess money. And then that excess money is taxed. So nobody likes to do that. So if you want to put in a 401k, it's very employer specific because we can do safe harbor plans. There's different ways you can put safe harbor plans in. If an employer says, okay, you know what, I got to do this, I might as well make this beneficial to my employees as well as me, the employer. I'm using this to attract and retain employees because that's what people or employers are having to do. Well, then what we like to do is take a look and say, eyeball it and say, all right, we've got 6 employees, 2 of them are owners, 4 of them aren't, 4 of them make minimum wage, or, we've got a little differential there. Well, let's just see how we can create a plan that meets everybody's needs. And there are usually ways to get that done. The private market 401k can disclude quite a few people based upon when you want to make them eligible. For kind of flip back to that CalSavers plan, an employee is eligible for that CalSavers plan day one. There's no elimination period. It's not like a medical plan, period. Day one, they have access to CalSavers. So keep that in mind. On a private 401k, you can make an elimination period of a year. You can have 2 different options as far as, enrollment. And you can do it employees 18 and over. You can put an hour restriction on it. So there's lots of different ways to make a 401k work to customize it for that employer's needs. And so it's important for us to sit down and have a conversation, say, okay, now that we have to do this, what is the employer's goal? What do they want to provide for the employee? And that's how we design the plan. And that's why a TPA is so important, because they help do that. And what they also help do is eyeball it as far as, okay, we've got an employer that wants to put in X amount of dollars because they're trying to now save for retirement. Employees are only going to put in a little. How do we best make this work for everyone? So it's just way more customizable. It's not cookie cutter. Yes, there are rules that you need to adhere to, but at the same time, it's not as stringent and as cookie cutter as the state program. So I'm going to keep going unless anybody has any questions. Now talk about non-compliance. So essentially from June 30th, all the employer has to do is sign paperwork. So they don't have to put, let's just say they are going to do the 401k. They don't have to put it in place by June 30th. They just have to sign paperwork by June 30th. Now, there's a 90-day period where it takes a while, and plus, especially now, because we're getting so many small group plans in, we want to try and be timely because it will take about 6 to 8 weeks to put it in play prior to employees being able to put away money. So if you said, okay, I want to do a 401k, I want to sign the paperwork on June 30th. Now what do I need to do? Well, we need to put the paperwork together. Everything needs to go through. Then we need to roll it out to the employees, help them figure out what they want to do. So at that point, it becomes a working 401k. Now, if they decide not to put anything in place, okay, fine. But there are definitely penalties. And the penalties are essentially for the first 90 days, if they don't put it in place, it's $250 per employee. And then after 180 days, it's $500. So essentially, if an employer decides not to put in play a 401k, or excuse me, a retirement plan, it's essentially $750 per year. Now, if you have 5 employees or 10 employees, that's my math. Let's do easy math. It's $7,500 of fees. Well, you could have put something in place a lot less expensive than $7,500. You could put a 401k in place. You could put CalSavers in place because that's not going to cost you anything. It's what you need to keep in mind and let your employer groups know is that if you don't comply, it's far more costly than it is to comply. And the compliance is like, okay, which way are we going to do this? But really the non-compliant way to go, it doesn't make any sense because it's more expensive. And you're seriously just writing a check to the government for $750 times however many employees you have. And that keeps going and going and going. And we have questions. So I want to talk a little bit about essential. And I got close to my 30 minutes. Does anybody have any questions before? Or did I just answer everyone's questions? All right. Or you're just so busy eating. So just to kind of let you know that it does take some time, as I mentioned, to put this in play. If you have questions, it's important for us to sit down and figure out, one, does the employer group have to do this? And two, what's the best option for that employer group? So, and have a conversation. I think the next step would be, one, look at the size of group. Do we have to do this? Two, if we do have to do this, or we're on the cusp of having to do this, then what's the best option? Because I would say don't start with CalSavers and then decide to switch, because it's hard to switch. As you know, once you sign up for any type of government program, whether it's Medicare or whatever, it's hard to unwind. If you're going to do it, if you have any questions, then that 401k and sitting down with a TPA, or doing this with a TPA and ourselves, and trying to figure out what the best way to go forward is. If it's finding the least expensive way, the most robust way, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to accommodate the employer or the employees? Are we just trying to do the bare minimum? Well, then that's what we need to figure out. But keep in mind that CalSavers program, the employer groups will start to receive letters. And then if they don't respond and they don't enroll, and two, to keep in mind, CalSavers is brokers can't have anything to do with it. I can give you the website. I can walk you through how to do it. But once it's done, we can have absolutely nothing to do with it. You have to call CalSavers. There is no hands-on treatment. They won't talk to anybody but the employer or the employees. So it's very low touch. I'm not going to say low service, but it's very, very low touch situation. And they're still working it out, because this is not an old program that they've been working on. This is not something that's been around for years and years. And they're just starting to do it for the groups of 5 or more. So keep in mind that the ramp up time is not necessarily what you probably want to see. And then 2, the options really aren't there. But we can walk through all of it, see what makes the most sense. But it's our job to let you know and keep, because as employers and as business managers, our job is to keep you abreast of what the new laws are and what's going on, to make sure that you stay compliant and nobody gets in trouble. We don't want to get in trouble. We don't want you to get in trouble. So if you want to have that dialogue, just let us know. This does any employee that's on a W-2, it applies to. It doesn't matter what they do. Keep in mind that the EDD, because you pay W-2s, because they pay payroll taxes, the state of California absolutely knows how many employees you have. So they absolutely know if you've had part-timers, seasonal, who's gotten paid, and they will aggregate it over the last calendar year, and they will figure out if you have over 5. Now, I would say that even if you're 99% sure that in calendar year 2022 that you're going to have over 5, it makes sense to put it in play earlier rather than later. Now, if you didn't get a letter for CalSavers for a client, that just doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't been, what's the word I'm looking for? They haven't been noted as a qualified employer. It just means they haven't received the letter yet. If your employers have payroll company, like an ADP or whomever, it could be Paychex, they are receiving notifications saying, hey, you got to do this. Hey, you got to do this. You have until June 30th. And one thing to be very careful of is that you have your ADPs, your Paychex. A lot of these companies do have their own 401ks. So if you're considering doing that, I would say reach out to us, because these payroll companies are great at payroll. They do things very, very well. But you need to be very careful when you're putting other benefits with a payroll company. And there's many reasons why, but you don't necessarily want to bundle everything with your payroll company. All right. Well, with that, I hope everybody enjoys their lunch, and I really appreciate the participation, and I hope this was helpful. We're going to continue to do this on different topics, because it's just because the landscape has changed, and we don't have everybody in the office anymore, and we used to do lunch and learns in offices, and that's just the way of the past. But we'll be doing hybrids. So, and if there's certain topics that you want us to discuss, I'm happy to do it. We can have a lunch and learn about it, whatever the case may be. We want to make sure that even though everybody's not in the office and we're all inundated with our computer and email and all that stuff, that we do keep you abreast of things that are changing, because they are changing. There are new legislations coming out with regards to long-term care, which is definitely something that we need to talk about and you need to be aware of, because that's also going to hit employer groups of actually 2 or more. So if you have any questions, you can hit me back later, Shiloh, anybody, let us know, and then we'll happy to answer, and we'll send everything out later. With that, I thank you guys for participating. Really appreciate it. Have a lovely afternoon.